Hello, Pavlo. It's nice to welcome you in Tallinn, we are together here in Estonia for the conference European Soul. This is already the third one, and I wanted to ask you, coming from Ukraine, most of the people here are from European Union. You are our neighbor, our big and important neighbor. How would you characterize what is a European soul? Should we search it, or are we just talking gibberish here?
Okay, it's my pleasure to be here in Estonia and in the European Union as well. I would say I have a lot of things imagined in the European Union and soul of the EU. I would say for me, first of all, it's values of the European Union. I value a lot, for example, peace, because now in Ukraine we lack peace. We have problem with a huge neighbor near us. We defend us against this attack, against annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass. So we value peace a lot, and we look at the European Union as a peaceful project where 28 countries do not have conflicts between each other, where they respect each other, value any issue they have. They have many challenges, but anyway they sit down at a table and they value what is so-called multilateralism. So talking to each other despite any divisions, problems, threats from outside and inside as well. Other things which are inspiring Ukraine a lot, I would say simply values of the EU, like democracy, human rights, dignity, solidarity. I definitely can name the event which started to transform Ukraine. It's the Euromaidan revolution, which happened exactly 5 years ago. It inspired us a lot. It actually started from the European Union, because Ukrainian people went to the streets to say that we do not support what our government said to us by stopping European integration of Ukraine. So they made a protest against it, and that's how the revolution in Ukraine started. The revolution itself ended in terms of physically in streets, but I would say revolution still continues in hearts and minds of people.
What do you say, how much has Ukraine changed since the start of Euromaidan revolution? Have you been able to make reforms to cut the corruption, or not? This is also the question looking from our side, since from European Union there are businesses which like to invest into Ukraine, do business, but we need for that sort of transparent and working rule of law. So your comment on that?
Yes, there are a lot of changes in Ukraine. I would say they are going quite tough, for sure. We have many challenges to these changes. We have an old system which still feels it can, you know, it can give back some efforts to gain back some power or block some processes in Ukraine, but despite of it we have a lot of changes, and this is connected of course to the reforms. I would say we have quite successful reform of education, reform of healthcare. For me, these two reforms are quite crucial, because healthcare is important for every human being, but education is very important because it transforms mindset of people. And what I have seen in my country, we had during previous decades still this old kind of Soviet, I would say hybrid Soviet, hybrid democratic way of education in Ukraine, and it was not efficient. But now with the new generation which is rising, I see a lot of changes from these young people. In terms of trade, it's a huge cooperation between Ukraine and the EU right now. Before the revolution we had 25% of volume of the Ukrainian trade, so it was for the EU. Now we have 42%.
So you're kind of turning from east to west.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. We reorient our export. I would say this is not only good for our business and cooperation between EU and Ukraine, but it's also good for rising production and trading standards inside Ukraine. So now we have much more good, better quality products inside Ukraine for people in many fields, because now we have to fulfill requirements which we have in the association agreement with the EU. Plus one more thing which I would definitely name in this case, it's visa liberalization between Ukraine and EU. Now people from Ukraine for more than a year can travel to the European Union for 90 days without visa, and I actually came here with a new biometric passport as well, without no Estonian or other visa, and it's a huge pleasure to be here, but I would say for me it's not something unusual, it's more unusual for people which I see in Ukraine, especially when I see young people who try to travel and discover European Union, and when I see old people who travel for their vocation, or when they are perhaps pensioners also, they travel to the EU, they come back to Ukraine, and they see various things differently. So they are inspired with what they have seen there, and they try to be critically, to think critically, constructively, not only just criticize the government, but trying to propose something and to organize themselves. So it's a huge also power of solidarity towards each other and self-organization.
Today we heard in the conference an idea or a thought that nowadays people, and this was in relation with global migration, that people choose a new country instead of choosing to build up their own country or changing the government. How is it with Ukraine after this association agreement and kind of more liberal moving standards, and how do you see it? Have Ukrainian people also fled from Ukraine, or they are staying with their country? How is it? Do you have some kind of migration issues, or people leaving? Since why I'm saying that, I remember that in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and it still is a case, people are going to work where they get more salaries.
Yeah. I would say it's true in Ukraine as well. We have a big problem with migration. Of course, there are several reasons. One of them is a conflict in the east. So we have people who are simply displaced, and they have no home, no work now, and no place to come back because they can be threatened, to their life and health. Yes. So they try to migrate to other places. There is more than 1.5 million people in Ukraine which are internally displaced people. They moved now to big cities, predominantly it's Kyiv, Dnipro, Lviv, but also it's Kharkiv, Odessa. We have a lot of Crimean Tatars actually who moved from Crimea, also inside continental Ukraine, and now study or work in different cities. I would say it's a big minus, of course, for these people and for our country, for economy itself. But it's also a plus for these cities where they have arrived. And it's also a matter of EU-Ukraine cooperation, because now we have more and more companies coming from the west and establishing their departments or various kind of plants, factories, and other opportunities in Ukraine. So EU helps to create new job places inside Ukraine. But I also agree with you that we have a migration of Ukrainians who go outside of the country. For sure we have people as in Baltic states and in many others who would like to earn a bigger salary, who would like to have more opportunities for their education or career, or perhaps they have some family relations and connections. And I think it's quite natural, and as we see at the countries which are already in the EU, unfortunately we can't stop it, and I think it's also part of human rights. Every person has a right to choose a place where to live, to work, and to be, I would say, to be realized with its talents and skills and wishes.
Okay, thank you for this little insight, and I hope that Ukraine will be a great success and democratic partner of ours.
Thank you very much. It's a big pleasure, and I would like also to add that EU is inspiring Ukraine, but I hope Ukraine will also inspire EU somehow, because this soul of Europe, it exists also outside of Europe right now. It's also in Ukraine, thanks to transformations, to revolution, to self-organization of people. I would say that many values in the EU could be perhaps reconsidered or revived thanks to Ukrainian experience, and we are really very glad to share with this experience, and that's why it's also my pleasure to attend your great conference. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.